Hold on a little longer. God's timing is perfect. Those words may seem simple, yet they carry a profound truth that can transform the way we live our lives. So often, we are tempted to look at the circumstances around us and decide for ourselves what is right or wrong, what is too late or too early. We become impatient when doors remain closed, when prayers seem unanswered, and when life does not move at the pace we desire. But in those moments, it is essential to remember that God is not constrained by our schedules, our expectations, or even our understanding of what is best. His timing is perfect, and His ways are higher than ours. The challenge is learning to trust Him even when everything in us wants to rush ahead, force an outcome, or walk away from the promise that has not yet arrived. There is a story in the Bible that illustrates this principle beautifully. Consider Abraham and Sarah. They had waited for decades for the promise of a child, for the fulfillment of God's word. They grew old, their bodies weary, and yet the promise lingered like a distant star on the horizon. At times, doubt must have crept into their hearts, and at times impatience must have whispered in their ears. Yet they held on. They trusted God, even when the natural evidence seemed to contradict His promise. And in God's perfect timing, long after the world said it was impossible, He fulfilled His word and Isaac was born. This story reminds us that the passage of time does not diminish God's faithfulness. In fact, it often amplifies it. Waiting is not passive. It is not idleness or resignation. It is an active state of faith where we continue to live, to pray, to obey, and to trust, even when we cannot see the outcome. Holding on longer means refusing to give in to despair when the road is difficult. It means choosing to believe that God sees the bigger picture, even when our vision is limited. It means understanding that delays are not denials, and pauses are not rejections. Sometimes God allows waiting because He is preparing us, shaping our character, and equipping us for what lies ahead. Every moment of waiting carries a purpose that we may not immediately comprehend. We live in a world that values speed and instant results. From the messages that arrive in seconds to the solutions that are expected overnight, patience can feel like a foreign concept. Yet the divine rhythm is different. God moves according to a timeline that is designed for our ultimate good, not our immediate comfort. The seasons of waiting, though difficult, are often necessary for the growth that will sustain us once the door opens. Like a tree that takes years to mature, bearing fruit only in its season, we too must be nurtured, strengthened, and made ready for the blessings that God has prepared. Holding on a little longer also requires a shift in perspective. We may look at our circumstances and see only obstacles, setbacks, and closed doors. But God sees opportunities, divine appointments, and paths that we cannot yet perceive. What appears to us as a delay may, in God's wisdom, be a time to redirect our steps, to deepen our faith, and to cultivate a heart that is prepared to receive His best. Patience in God's timing is an expression of trust. It is saying, Lord, I may not understand, but I believe You are faithful. I may not see the way, but I know You are guiding me. I may not have the answer, but I trust that You do. Faith is not measured by the absence of difficulty. It is measured by the decision to hold on when everything around us urges surrender. To hold on a little longer is to acknowledge that God is at work behind the scenes, orchestrating events, opening doors at the precise moment, and fulfilling promises that may seem delayed, but are never forgotten. Every trial, every season of waiting, and every unanswered question is a part of the divine plan. God's timing is perfect because it is sovereign, purposeful, and full of love. It is easy to become discouraged when life does not move according to our schedule. We see others receiving blessings that we desire, and we wonder why our prayers remain unanswered. We face setbacks, obstacles, and delays, and the temptation to give up becomes strong. Yet it is precisely in these moments that holding on is most crucial. The promise that is delayed is not denied, the answer that is postponed is not refused, and the door that remains closed is not locked forever. God's timing is perfect, And waiting upon Him is not wasted time. It is preparation, purification, and positioning. Waiting is not a passive state. It is a season of preparation and refinement. Many people struggle to understand this because waiting often feels uncomfortable, frustrating, and even discouraging. When we are in the midst of uncertainty, when our prayers seem unanswered and our plans delayed, it is natural to feel restless, anxious, and impatient. Yet it is in these very moments, in the quiet spaces between the now and the not yet, that God is at work shaping our hearts, minds, and spirits for what is to come. Waiting is never wasted. Every day, every trial, every moment of delay is purposeful, designed to prepare us for the doors God is about to open in our lives. Consider the refining process of gold. Raw gold is buried, hidden, and covered in impurities. It must go through fire and intense heat before it shines with brilliance. The fire does not destroy the gold. Rather, it removes the dross and perfects its value. In the same way, God often allows seasons of waiting to remove the things in our lives that would hinder us from receiving His best. Our patience is tested, our faith is stretched, and our hearts are purified so that when the right opportunity comes, we are ready to step into it with wisdom, integrity, and strength. Waiting refines our character, revealing the hidden weaknesses that need God's touch and strengthening the parts of us that will bear fruit in His kingdom. The Bible gives us many examples of individuals who experienced waiting as preparation. Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, spent years in prison before he was elevated to a place of power in Egypt. During those long years of waiting, he could have succumbed to despair, but instead he remained faithful, patient, and steadfast in God's presence. Each season of waiting was shaping him, preparing him for the responsibility, wisdom, and compassion he would need to save not only his family, but an entire nation. Joseph's time in the prison was not wasted. It was a necessary period of preparation for the moment when God's plan would unfold perfectly. Similarly, consider Moses, who spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. The time in the wilderness was not idle. It was a season of preparation, teaching him humility, dependence on God, and patience. Without that time of waiting and refinement, Moses would not have been equipped to fulfill the monumental calling God had placed on his life. Waiting prepares us not just to receive, but to act responsibly and faithfully when God opens the next door. Waiting also teaches us to rely on God's strength rather than our own. It reminds us that we are not in control and that our timing is not the final authority. When we try to rush, we risk stepping into situations unprepared, making choices that are impulsive or misguided. But when we embrace the season of waiting as a time of preparation, we begin to develop discernment, patience, and a deeper understanding of God's ways. We learn to trust that His plan is perfect even when it seems delayed, and that He is orchestrating events behind the scenes for our ultimate good. During waiting, we are also refined in our faith. Trials, setbacks, and delays can feel heavy, but they strengthen our spiritual resilience. Like a tree whose roots grow deeper in the soil to withstand storms, our faith grows stronger when it is tested. We learn endurance, humility, and perseverance. We discover that our hope is not dependent on circumstances, but on the unchanging nature of God. Waiting is an opportunity to cultivate intimacy with God, to deepen our relationship with Him, and to recognize that His presence is sufficient even when the promises have not yet materialized. Furthermore, waiting allows us to prepare our hearts for the blessings that are coming. Without preparation, we might take what God gives us for granted or misuse it. But in seasons of waiting, God cultivates gratitude, patience, and wisdom. He teaches us the lessons we need, molds our character, and positions us to step into His plans with readiness and discernment. Waiting is not a pause in God's work. It is an active, purposeful season of refinement. Sometimes we must remind ourselves that the things God is preparing us for are bigger than we can imagine. The delay is not denial. The waiting is not punishment. It is a necessary process for shaping us into vessels can carry the fullness of what God intends. Every trial, every delay, every challenge is like a sculptor's hand chiseling, polishing, and perfecting us for the masterpiece that is about to be revealed. Patience, faith, and trust are cultivated in the crucible of waiting, producing a strength and maturity that cannot be achieved any other way. Sometimes in life, we find ourselves standing in front of doors that refuse to open. We knock, we plead, we try every key we can find, yet the door remains shut. It can feel discouraging, even heartbreaking, especially when we have worked hard, prayed earnestly, and waited faithfully. We may begin to wonder if God has forgotten us, if our efforts are in vain, or if the opportunity we desire will ever come. Yet it is precisely in these moments, when every human expectation has been exhausted, that God is quietly at work, orchestrating new doors that we cannot yet see. Just because a door is closed does not mean God has abandoned us. It often means that He is preparing a far better opportunity, one that aligns perfectly with His plan for our lives. We live in a world that values immediate results. If a door remains closed, we are tempted to assume that it is permanently shut or that we are meant to turn back. But God's perspective is vastly different from ours. He sees the beginning, the middle, and the end all at once. What seems like a closed door from our point of view may actually be a redirection, a preparation, or a protective measure from God. Sometimes doors close to prevent us from entering something that is not good for us, to guide us toward what is better, or to preserve us from harm. God's timing and His choices are perfect, even when they contradict our own desires. Consider the story of Peter in the New Testament. After the death and resurrection of Jesus, Peter was unsure of his purpose and faced many challenges. He had experienced failure, denial, and confusion. From a human perspective, the doors to meaningful ministry seemed close to him. Yet God was orchestrating events in Peter's life, preparing him for the monumental role he would play in spreading the gospel. The closed doors Peter faced were not permanent barriers. They were part of a divine plan that would open the way for his greatest impact. God's orchestration of doors, closing some and opening others, is always purposeful and designed for our ultimate good. Closed doors are not always rejections. They are invitations to trust God more deeply. They call us to faith, patience, and obedience. When one door remains shut, it is an opportunity to seek God's guidance, to align our hearts with His will, and to prepare for the doors He is about to open. Often the closed doors lead to pathways we could never have imagined. Doors that bring blessings far beyond what we originally desired. God's opportunities are not always what we expect, but they are always what we need. There is also a lesson in persistence. Knocking on doors, waiting in faith, and continuing to pursue God's will is an expression of trust. It demonstrates that we are not giving up when faced with obstacles. We are learning to rely not on our own strength or understanding, but on God's power and wisdom. Every closed door is an invitation to deepen our faith, to grow spiritually, and to recognize that God's timing is perfect. He may be orchestrating people, circumstances, or events in ways that we cannot yet perceive, all to ensure that when the right door opens, it will be exactly what we need at exactly the right time. Sometimes the most profound blessings come from doors we did not choose, from paths we would not have expected, or from opportunities we never imagined. God's closed doors are not always disappointments. They are often divine redirections, guiding us toward His best plan. The key is to remain patient, faithful, and obedient while trusting that He is at work behind the scenes. Even when the doors appear firmly closed, God's hand is moving. He is arranging circumstances, opening hearts, and preparing us to step into the opportunities that will fulfill His purposes for our lives. Moreover, closed doors can teach us humility and dependence on God. When everything seems to be blocked, we are reminded that we are not in control and that our plans alone cannot shape the future. We learn to pray more earnestly, to seek wisdom more diligently, and to listen more carefully for God's guidance. These seasons of waiting and uncertainty are shaping us, refining us, and positioning us for the doors that are about to open. God's orchestration is intentional. Every closed door, every delay, and every setback is part of a divine plan designed to lead us into a greater future. Doors may appear closed, but God's hand is never idle. He is orchestrating opportunities, arranging circumstances, and preparing us for the next chapter in our lives. Sometimes it is a matter of patience, sometimes a matter of trust, and sometimes a matter of obedience. The closed doors of today are setting the stage for the open doors of tomorrow, doors that will lead us into blessings, purpose, and fulfillment beyond what we can imagine. Faith and perseverance are essential during trials. Life is full of moments that test us, moments that challenge our resolve, our hope, and our trust in God. These trials come in many forms: loss, disappointment, illness, rejection, financial struggles, broken relationships, or unfulfilled dreams. It is easy, in the midst of these challenges, to feel overwhelmed and question whether God is present, whether He cares, or whether He is truly in control. Yet it is precisely in these moments of difficulty that faith and perseverance become not only necessary, but transformative. Faith is the anchor that holds us steady, and perseverance is the strength that keeps us moving forward, even when the path is rough. The night is long, and the storm shows no sign of passing. Faith is not simply believing when life is easy. Faith is believing in God when life is hard, trusting Him when the way seems blocked, and holding on to His promises when every visible sign suggests failure. It is the confident assurance that God is working, even when we cannot see it, and that His plan for our lives is good, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. Faith is a choice, a daily decision to trust God's wisdom and timing over our own understanding. It is faith that sustains us when we cannot find the solution, when the answers are delayed, and when the doors we desire remain closed. Faith reminds us that our perspective is limited, but God's perspective is infinite. It assures us that what seems impossible to us is entirely possible with Him, and that every trial has a purpose designed to bring about growth, maturity, and preparation for the blessings to come. Perseverance is the companion of faith. Faith gives us hope, but perseverance keeps us moving forward. It enables us to endure hardships without giving up, to press on even when the journey is exhausting, and to continue trusting God when every instinct tempts us to quit. Perseverance is not passive waiting, it is active persistence. It is continuing to pray, continue to work, continue to love, and continue to trust, even when progress is slow and the future is uncertain. Perseverance transforms challenges into opportunities for growth and strengthens the character of those who refuse to be defeated by circumstances. It teaches patience, fortitude, and resilience, qualities that cannot be developed in comfort or ease. Consider the life of Job. He faced unimaginable trials, losing his wealth, his children, and his health. Yet amidst his suffering, Job clung to his faith. He refused to curse God or abandon his trust in the midst of devastation. His perseverance through trials not only sustained him, but ultimately led to restoration, blessing, and a deeper intimacy with God. Job's story reminds us that faith and perseverance do not guarantee an easy path, but they ensure that God's purposes are fulfilled in our lives and that we emerge stronger, wiser, and more aligned with His will. Faith and perseverance also cultivate a sense of hope that is unshakable. When we face trials, it is easy to focus on what is lost, what has failed, or what seems impossible. But faith shifts our focus from the temporary pain to the eternal promises of God. It reminds us that God is always at work, that He is never absent, and that He can bring good out of even the most difficult circumstances. Perseverance allows us to act on that faith, to continue seeking God's guidance, to continue striving for His purposes, and to remain steadfast in prayer and obedience. Together, faith and perseverance form a partnership that empowers us to navigate life's storms with courage and confidence. Another aspect of perseverance is learning to endure with a heart of gratitude. Trials can teach us to value the lessons hidden within difficulty, to recognize God's presence even when it is not obvious, and to appreciate the strength and resilience He cultivates in us. When we persevere, we grow in humility, patience, and dependence on God. We begin to understand that every challenge has a purpose, every obstacle is an opportunity for growth, and every delay is a preparation for a greater blessing. Perseverance turns trials into testimonies, struggles into stories of God's faithfulness, and suffering into a deeper understanding of His love. Faith and perseverance also inspire others. When those around us witness our steadfast trust in God during trials, it can encourage them to hold on in their own struggles. Our perseverance becomes a testimony to God's goodness, a demonstration of His power at work in real lives. It shows that even when circumstances are difficult, hope is possible, and God's promises are true. Faith without perseverance is incomplete, and perseverance without faith is hollow. Together, they create a life that is anchored, resilient, and ready to receive the doors of opportunity that God is preparing. Life is often filled with seasons of darkness, times when the weight of trials presses down on our hearts and the path ahead seems obscured. We face challenges that drain our strength, disappointments that cloud our vision, and moments of despair that make us question the future. Yet, even in the midst of struggle, there is a profound truth we can hold on to. God brings light, hope, and blessings when we need them most. Darkness is never permanent in the presence of God. The storms may rage, the nights may feel long, but His light has the power to penetrate even the deepest shadows and guide us toward a brighter, more hopeful tomorrow. When we face difficulties, it is natural to focus on the problem, to feel overwhelmed by the obstacles, and to wonder if relief will ever come. But God often works in ways that are invisible to us. Just as the sun may be hidden behind clouds, His presence is still shining, preparing the way, and orchestrating blessings that we cannot yet see. God does not abandon us in our struggle. Instead, He walks with us through it, giving us strength when we are weak, courage when we are afraid, and hope when despair threatens to consume us. Even in the darkest moments, His light is present, illuminating the path forward and reminding us that the dawn is coming. Consider the story of Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned. From a human perspective, his life seemed full of hopelessness and injustice. Yet God was at work behind the scenes, bringing light and hope into Joseph's life in ways that were not immediately visible. Every trial he endured was a step toward the greater purpose God had for him. Ultimately, Joseph's perseverance and faith allowed him to rise to a place where he could save countless lives, including his own family. What seemed like a season of suffering became a conduit for God's blessings, a testament to the truth that God brings light and hope even in the midst of struggle. Struggle also refines our faith and reveals the strength of God's character. When we are in difficult circumstances, we are often forced to rely not on our own abilities, but on His. We discover that He is our refuge, our strength, and our deliverer. The light He brings into our darkness is not always immediate relief from the situation, but it is the assurance of His presence, the peace that surpasses understanding, and the hope that sustains us through trials. It reminds us that God's power is made perfect in weakness, and that His blessings often arrive in ways we do not anticipate. Hope is an essential companion in times of struggle. It is the belief that our circumstances are not the final word, that God's plan is greater than our pain, and that He can bring good out of even the most difficult situations. Hope does not ignore reality. It acknowledges the difficulty while trusting that God's promises are true. It encourages us to keep moving forward, to keep praying, to keep believing, and to keep trusting that God is orchestrating events for our ultimate good. When we embrace hope, we allow God's light to shine through the cracks of our brokenness, illuminating a path forward and giving us the courage to endure. Blessings often emerge from struggle in unexpected ways. The very difficulties that challenge us may become the source of growth, wisdom, and insight, just as a seed must be buried in the dark soil before it can sprout and grow toward the sun. Our trials can cultivate the qualities in us that prepare us to receive God's blessings fully. We may discover resilience, compassion, patience, and a deeper understanding of God's love. The blessings that follow struggle are often sweeter because of the journey we endured to reach them. They are reminders that God's timing and ways are perfect, and that He never wastes the seasons of our lives. It is important to remember that God's light is not always about immediate change in circumstances. Sometimes His light is a quiet presence that calms our hearts, a whisper of reassurance that we are not alone, or a gentle nudge that guides us in the right direction. These moments of divine illumination sustain us, encourage us, and help us persevere through trials. They are evidence that God is at work, that He is moving in our lives, and that the blessings He has prepared are on the horizon. Even when the night feels endless, God's light is breaking through. Even when despair threatens to overwhelm, hope is being renewed. Even when the struggle seems relentless, blessings are being cultivated in ways we cannot yet perceive. Darkness may test us, trials may challenge us, and difficulties may weigh heavily upon us, but God's presence transforms our struggles into opportunities for growth, hope, and future blessings. When God opens a door in our lives, it is not only an opportunity, it is an invitation. It is an invitation to step into something new, something greater, and something designed according to His perfect plan. Many times, we hesitate at the threshold, unsure of what lies ahead, anxious about the unknown, or fearful of failure. But stepping through a door that God opens requires both courage and gratitude. It requires the courage to leave behind the familiar, to trust in His guidance, and to embrace the new season He has prepared for us. It also requires a heart of gratitude, recognizing that every open door is a blessing from God and an answer to prayers offered in faith and perseverance. Courage is essential because stepping into the unknown often demands faith that exceeds our comfort zone. Human nature prefers safety, predictability, and control. We like to know exactly what lies ahead before we move forward. Yet God rarely calls us to walk paths that are entirely visible. He calls us to trust Him even when the road is uncertain. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means moving forward in spite of fear, relying on God's strength rather than our own. Every door He opens comes with purpose, and walking through it with courage allows us to experience the fullness of what He has promised. Stepping through God's open door also requires obedience. It is one thing to recognize that a door is open, it is another to respond. Sometimes we hesitate because we overanalyze doubt or fear making a mistake. But God's invitations are never random, they are intentional. He opens doors in His wisdom and calls us to walk through them in faith. Obedience combined with courage ensures that we do not miss the opportunities He has prepared. It is a response of trust, demonstrating that we are willing to follow His lead even when the outcome is uncertain. Gratitude transforms the way we experience the blessings behind the open door. When we step through with a heart of thankfulness, we recognize that the opportunities before us are gifts from God. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have received. It reminds us that God's faithfulness is consistent, that His timing is perfect, and that every open door is an answer to prayers and an expression of His love. A grateful heart also positions us to receive more. When we approach opportunities with humility and appreciation, we honor God's provision and acknowledge His sovereignty over every blessing in our lives. Consider the story of Esther in the Bible. She was presented with a position of influence that required great courage and faith. The doors of opportunity opened before her, but stepping through them involved risk and uncertainty. She could have hesitated, feared the consequences, or questioned her worthiness. Instead, she acted with courage, trusting that God had placed her in that position for such a time as that. Her obedience and faith brought about deliverance for her people and revealed the blessings that come when we step boldly through God's open doors. Every door that God opens is a doorway into His plan for our growth, purpose, and fulfillment. Walking through it with courage means embracing the challenges and responsibilities that come with the opportunity. It may require sacrifice, patience, and perseverance, but it also brings the reward of alignment with God's will and the blessing of being part of His work. Courage allows us to rise above fear and doubt, to act despite uncertainty, and to trust that God's guidance will never fail. Gratitude also reminds us of the journey that led to this moment. Often we encounter open doors after seasons of struggle, waiting, and preparation. Stepping through with thankfulness allows us to recognize the lessons learned, the growth achieved, and the faith strengthened during the waiting period. It connects our past experiences with our present opportunities, helping us to see God's hand in every step along the way. Gratitude turns the experience from mere opportunity into a celebration of God's faithfulness and provision. Stepping through God's open doors is also an act of faith for the future. It is trusting that the blessings on the other side are part of a larger plan, even if we cannot see the entire path ahead. Faith enables us to move forward without knowing every detail, relying on God's wisdom and direction. It is a commitment to walk in alignment with His will, believing that He will continue to guide, protect, and provide as we take each step.